So this is the two hamburgers or cheeseburgers and the fries that Mom got me from the Willow the other day. And this is the chocolate that Mom got me while we were with Dad and my sister during a trip to Saratoga Springs. In order to see my sister following her graduation from Skidmore University. In the hours leading up to the car ride, I first got up at around 3 in the morning. Following me falling asleep in the late afternoon to early evening, and as a result missing out on a trip to go to the Willow. And so instead I ended up having 2 cans of Chef Boyardee beef ravioli, but I had the cans about an hour apart, if I recall. One at 3:30 in the morning, and the other at... Actually, I'm thinking it was at roughly 5 in the morning. The burgers were pretty good. I spent quite a bit of time watching YouTube videos on my laptop. What exactly they were of, I'm not entirely sure. Our driver for this road trip was Dad, who came over at roughly 9 in the morning. And we headed for the road sometime between 15 minutes later and half an hour later. And we got to our destination, aka to Saratoga Springs within by 12:30 p.m. I got to see my sister's boyfriend, Mateo, for the first time in months. their apartment, for which the lease for which expires within days before they move to Philadelphia, was a bit messy, but nothing too bad. I welcome the opportunity to stretch my legs. I tried to work on styrofoam drawings, which my dad had some objections for, due to the risk of me getting Sharpie marker ink on my hands, which is a valid concern, and there's a good chance of it happening whenever I make a styrofoam drawing. I was thinking of bringing one long flat piece, relatively flat piece, excuse me, but because I felt like that styrofoam was going to be potentially used as a prop character, for the scene I've been slowly working on, currently in the 99th Van Hamming. But because I felt like I didn't have the right color Sharpie markers, and it turned out that Dad didn't want to make a quick stop so Mom could buy me Sharpie markers at Walgreens, I instead brought over these smaller cube-shaped styrofoams, but they're kind of thin cubes. But they're still cube-like. I started off with something simple. At the time, I didn't necessarily think of it being a warm-up. It was kind of just what I felt like doing. We probably hit the road at around 9 in the morning, because I finished that first styrofoam at 9:26 a.m. 9:46 a.m. 9:46 a.m. And then for the second one I did during the car ride, by which point, I think shortly after I made the first styrofoam block drawing, Dad was able to talk me quite easily into as usual, connecting my mobile phone to the car radio via Bluetooth, and to play music off of YouTube videos. And I did that while essentially keeping the phone on one of my legs. That one to be exact. And for the second styrofoam block drawing, I wanted to try and do something more difficult. In an effort to get in some deliberate practice. I was able to do quite a bit of toppings with the limited colors I had. I did a sort of dark green for the green bell peppers sort of thing. That's quite fortunate. I used the black, whatever I had left of the black markers, whatever I had of the black Sharpie markers, which wasn't much. To make black olives. Then I used them again to make the outlines for mushrooms. And my best bet was to use a teal colored Sharpie marker for them to color the outlines in. I made the pizza man's face using pepperoni, which I drew in using a shade of red. I used a plastic bag to hold the 3 blocks of styrofoam and the Sharpie markers in so that I wouldn't make a mess. Because I know that Dad wouldn't like that. If it ended up being that the styrofoam blocks and the Sharpie markers got all over somewhere. The thing is, I only colored 2 of those little blocks in. The second one I finished at around 11 in the morning, I would say. Maybe 11:30 in the morning. It took some time to find my sister's apartment. In which at least her boyfriend and a girl called Mary live together as roommates. We took some pictures of the Skidmore campus sign, during which a nice lady with a dog stopped by. Her dog was blonde and had two colored eyes. One was brown and the other a light blue. I believe the right one was light blue and the left one was brown. The dog was pretty friendly. I believe she ended up taking a majority of the pictures of us at that Brockport sign. I noticed it was easier for me to get up and sit on top of the sign from the back. And what made me think of sitting on the sign was because my sister did that initially and did that throughout the whole process while I was just at the peak. Having just one leg up past the sign, kind of like this. So I was sort of half sitting on top of the sign. Which my family initially objected to, but I ended up being able to do it anyway. And some other goofing off. In particular, we were told to initially make the pictures goofy. But apparently, with just roughly 3 goofy pictures, during which I rabbit-eared both my dad and my sister, but instead of doing it this way, I did it this way to make it different. And then it was the picture in which I wore my glasses kind of like this, except maybe at a less extreme angle. It caused the lady to make a comment about how brothers are for essentially getting on the sister's nerves, in a sort of sense. After that photo session part, we drove to the Boca Bar Bistro. During which my sister ended up getting something very expensive. I don't believe I could pronounce it correctly for the life of me, but It was something with Spanish rice, mussels, clams, shrimp. It was supposed to have calamari or octopus, but it ended up not having it. A large 12-inch order came to about $55. I initially wanted to get that too because I was intrigued by the uniqueness of the dish. But at my dad's recommendation, I ended up getting the Boca Burger, which ended up being pretty good. It actually might be better to have fried, highly processed food with alcoholic beverages, as I did. To be exact, I ended up getting a total of 2 drinks from the cocktail menu. First, the bee sting, which consisted of tequila, which, as my dad has observed, I tend to butcher a lot. And I have no idea if I just butchered it or not, but it's supposed to be a Spanish word. Speaking of which, I spoke a bit of Spanish during our stay at the restaurant. Incredibly, the bill came to about $180. I figured to spend that kind of money, you would have to go to a really fancy place. But no, apparently not. I accidentally spilled about a third, at least, of the bee sting due to clumsiness caused by unfamiliarity with the shape of glass they use for cocktails. For the first cocktail, I thankfully was able to get some food in. I was able to fill up on an olive, which I chewed carefully, because you don't want, though these olives had pits, and you don't want to bite into the pit of an olive. I've heard those contain cyanide, or something similar you don't want to put into your body, because the chemical will break stuff in it, and you don't want that. This is the chocolate that Mom bought one of us each, me and my sister. I think it was at that honey and tea place we went to following our trip at the restaurant. Then, my sister and my mom made a quick stop at a store, at the Lucia store within the plaza. But I don't think they bought anything, according to my memory. Then we made a stop at I think roughly during that Lucia stop, Dad made a stop at what was that Death Wish coffee place, but it's now something else. But he was looking for a particular mug. It may have been a Saratoga Springs mug, but he ended up finding a Moxie mug, which of my impression had some kind of pirate lady on it, only without an eye patch or anything like that. Some kind of woman you would expect to see during the golden age of piracy era, which was hundreds of years ago and spanned hundreds of years. But clothing changed little, according to my impressions during that time. And so then, my mom, my sister, and I made a stop at the Saratoga Gelato place, which during previous visits to Saratoga Springs I had been wanting to go to, but in the past it either be deemed we didn't have time for that, or the place ended up being closed. Well, thankfully, I was at last able to get gelato at the Saratoga Gelato place. It was pretty delicious. And I still had my one night in Rio tea that I got from the honey and tea place with mango honey. Excuse me. Honey is pretty delicious. Though I can't help but feel concerned about the bees. Since they unknowingly do so much good for us. That and they're a pretty precious life form. What makes them intriguing and other insects is that they tend to be so small compared to someone like me that I'm kind of like some kind of landscape to them. Which is part of what made the bug I noticed had gotten on me shortly before we went into that Boca Bistro place. What had intrigued me so much about that bug. It looked like some kind of beetle, but I'm no entomologist or something like that. Whatever an expert on knowing species is. I was pretty intrigued by it. Which is why I at one point so intently filmed it, but the Boca Bistro videos aren't yet up on my YouTube channel. After that stop at the gelato place, during which afterwards we made a stop at a public bench within the downtown area. that sort of urban center. By the time we got back to the apartment, I was feeling pretty tired and took my Crocs off to give my feet a rest from wearing the Crocs. By that point, the shorts I was wearing had dug into me a bit, since that's what shorts tend to do if you wear them for hours on end. But prior to that, they are pretty comfortable. And my behavior at the graduation ceremony kind of threw my sister and my parents for a bit of a whirl. Me in particular picking a photo of me from King Crab that I made using the snipping tool off of a YouTube video of the footage from King Crab. Me wearing shorts to my in-person mini grad walk. And my decision to upload a video I made using Beyond for my stage clips. And same thing for that King Crab photo. I ended up sleeping for most of the car ride home. Which actually, in a sort of way, Dad was sort of thankful for, because at one point during the car ride to Saratoga Springs, I played basically 6 to 7 remixes of that "I get knocked down, but I get up again. There's no keeping me down." That sort of song. The humping song. One of the remixes at one point was in French. And basically, yeah, that's... It could possibly be our last trip to Saratoga Springs, but I hope it doesn't come to that. Saratoga Springs is a pretty good city. They're pretty liberal for a city with such a strong horse racing culture. Which I like, the liberal part of it. Not necessarily the horse racing part.